Welcome, people.
Wow.
This truly is assistant editors running the show today. No Daniel, just me and Jeff. So
Daniel's off trying to meet celebrities at the local comic convention. Dallas Fan Expo's happening this weekend, so he is out there collecting comics, collecting autographs.
Yeah, did he say he had anyone he was like specifically going to see?
I don't know. I don't think he did. I know some of the comic creators because he bought some comics, hoping to get them signed from people, but I don't remember who's there. And it sounds like there. I mean, I love a comic convention, but too many people.
Yeah, I always call it like Fan Expo is for the tourists. You know,
Yeah.
it's the people who are like, oh, look, they're having like I think this one is a Back to the Future heavy show. So, cause yeah, like I'm seeing Michael J. Fox is there, Huey Lewis is there, Christopher Lloyd. I mean, there are just so many. Holy shit! Like, yeah, this John Cena's there, which I would love to see. You know, just for Peacemaker, even though he is part of the Fast and Furious family.
Yeah.
I didn't know Mr. T was still alive. I thought he had gotten cancer.
I mean, maybe he did, and he made it. He's still around.
Orlando Bloom. I mean, geez, there's like a lot. Oh, and Zachary Levi's here. And did you see the Zachary Levi news?
No. I mean, I'm assuming it's like he was something insane.
Well, I read that he wants to open a studio in Texas because Texas is now like wanting to fund films that are Texas friendly, which is, you know.
I saw I don't know, some news report where states will give movie companies tax breaks if you come and film, in the state. So
yeah,
they get tax rebates or whatever. That's usually how it works. And I saw them debating this bill. So not way back in the back, about 25 years ago, Texas had a chance to really become like Atlanta. So Atlanta became like second Hollywood because Hollywood got too expensive for Hollywood. So Georgia and Atlanta just threw their doors open. Tyler Perry, moved there, and then like they film a bunch of stuff in Atlanta. Dallas was kind of on that track, but they never went through past the like tax rebates for the film companies. So they keep going to Canada or Atlanta or whatever. And I think they want to try to do it again, but they're doing it in the weird Texas religious way where they're like, can we just do it where like if there's cussing, we don't give them any money, or we have to, whatever. And I'm just like, Texas is so backwards.
Yeah.
Like they're so pro business, but so like pious. I'm like, you can't attract to the same thing. Like it's not going to work. Nobody's going to want to come here to gamble if they can't do drugs on top of it, you know?
Exactly. Like everyone here, like we're close enough to Oklahoma. You go to Oklahoma for legal weed. You can go. I mean, Oklahoma's got a
You go to
bad meth
Louisiana.
problem. Yeah, you go to Louisiana to gamble. You go to Oklahoma to gamble. But then we're seeing that play out. Like here we go to a weird sidebar. We have watched the destruction of the Dallas Mavericks happen over the past few months just because the new team ownership wants gambling here. So they're trying to tank the team so that it moves to Las Vegas. And the fans here are just now figuring that out. So it's like watching sports fans. It's like when Jerry moved Jerry moved Dallas to Arlington, because Dallas wouldn't give them enough tax breaks, so
yeah, and I get that's how it works. I'm just like, it's the business Republicans are not on the same page as the Christian Republicans, the pious Christian, and they will come to a head, and things are not going to work out. I think that Texas is on track to be Missouri 2.0.
Yeah.
And Missouri has Branson, and like, who goes to Branson except for old people and like people, ironically, I feel like, I don't know. Texas is weird.
Yeah, and especially now that they I don't know, Dan Patrick's gone crazy with the THC band. We really have a lot of supervillains here that don't work for anyone. So.
we do.
But I'm still fascinated looking at the people that are going to be at this show. I mean, there's Frank Grillo, Leah Thompson.
I know Felicia Day is here in town. I saw her on her Instagram post, from a Buc-ee's. Yeah.
She was at a Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
I guess if you're going to go, you got to visit a Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
Man, Rob Schneider, who has 3 credits, and one of them is Saturday Night Live.
I feel like this is probably got to be the friendlier conventions for people like Zach Levi and Rob Schneider. They're like, yeah, we'll do the Texas conventions because we know people will show up for us there at least.
Yeah, Keith David. I would love to see Keith David. And man, he's just done so many great things that I've seen, and now he's in Duster and he's playing the big kingpin in that.
Nice. Who are the comic creators there?
Let's see here. Now we're going through animation voices. Like, Comic Cons aren't for comics anymore. Like, we really are. Like,
you gotta get the celebs.
Okay, so we've got Scott Snyder, which I'm sure Daniel will want to see. Greg Capullo, Ryan Otley. I think he wanted to get some Ryan Otley art. Clayton Crane, great artist, love his work. Donnie Cates.
Oh,
fuck. I love Donnie Cates. I would have loved to gone to see him. Alessandro Capuccio. I know I'm brutalizing that name, but Moon Knight artist.
Oh, okay.
On the Jed McKay run. Yeah, fantastic. Chris Condon, Tony Daniel, Philip Kennedy Johnson.
Oh.
Jay Lee. I know he's a big Jay Lee fan. David Messina. More cover artists. Charles Soule.
Oh, cool.
He
wanted to get Charles Soule's autograph. I remember he saying something about that.
Yeah, and I hope he's doing a Star Wars panel. Like, I would really love to hear his Star Wars take.
And the Ryan Brown, the co-creator of the 8 Billion Genies, and like, they're both there.
Oh God, that is a great book. I would love to get mine autograph. Ram V.
Oh, Ram V would be cool to talk to.
Pablo Villalobos.
Oh yeah.
Timothy Zahn, more Star Wars. That'd be a great panel. Timothy Zahn and Charles Soule. Brett Bean. Oh, I Hate Fairyland. Enid Balam. X-Men Manhunt, NYX, Bloodhunt X-Men, Jubilee, Spider-Gwen Smash. See, now I'm getting to some that I'm not familiar with.
The deep bench.
Yeah. But then we got some locals. Sam De La Rosa, he's always been at cons as long as I could remember going back to him. Kerry Gamble.
Mm.
He was an artist I got autographed back when I was a kid going to Dallas Fantasy Fairs. I think I have him autographing a couple of Power Man Iron Fist books I have. Let's see here. Man, now I'm like, oh, Cully Hamner. Love Cully Hamner. Larry F. Houston, who worked on the X-Men animated series. Or
Oh, cool.
well, it says X-Men animated series and X-Men 97, but it doesn't say if he's in the comics group, but I wasn't sure if it was the animated show and he worked on the animated part of it.
Well, they both had comic versions of them, so maybe he
Yeah.
worked on the comic version of the show. I know that. So it's at the convention's at the Kay Bailey Big Convention Center in downtown Dallas.
That's massive.
And there's also an oddities and curiosities convention this weekend there, and that's the convention full of like weird taxidermied squirrels and goth art and stuff like that. So I imagine that the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Center looks insane right now. Like, I would love to be a fly on the wall, but I would also, like, as a human, hate to be there because I'm just like, it would be way too crowded for me. Because I would go to a comic convention, or I would definitely go to the Curiosity convention, but smash them together, and too much anxiety for me. I'm just like, no.
Yeah. Plus we have like measles outbreaks here in Texas. We've got Con crud can go to a whole nother level here and just become Texas specific, as big as this convention is, and plus the amount of people that aren't just comic book people, but because I've had friends who like message me and they'll be like, "Hey, I'm at Fan Expo. Are you here?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." Not that I wouldn't love to see all these people, but I'm just not a fan of Fan Expo in the sense that it came in, bought out a lot of the cons, and specifically tries to make the other conventions, like it'll go head to head and schedule up against the same con or another con there. So, and they typically like just get rid of the locals that work the con and fly people in, which is really weird when you have locals who've worked these cons for a long time. So, it's just kind of, it's just what from my end, I don't see anything good coming out of it. And plus it just brings in like tourists, like I say, like people who are just casual fans and not there for like comics. But then this has become more of a celebrity thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Ben Templesmith, love his art. He also does like cons like Texas Frightmare Weekend that I'm a big fan of. I wasn't able to go this year, but I saw a lot of stuff coming out of there a few weeks ago.
I didn't realize they moved that convention to the Irving Center, because that used to be like out in Waxahachie or something.
Well, it was at the airport. So you had to like drive in and park because it was at the airport hotel. And which was okay. It was kind of fun, but it was definitely like very packed. I mean, it outgrew that like a few years ago, but I think they had signed a deal, so that convention was staying there for a few years. I missed that one. That was one I actually like dressed up for. I did Professor Pig. And did some cosplay there. And it's fun because when you see people who recognize, that costume, which is rare because it's like you're at a horror convention, but then you get the little comics overlap. That's always fun. That's fun. But let's see here. Daniel has asked us to talk about The Dark Knight for 5 minutes to meet the requirements of the thumbnail. So can you do 5 minutes on The Dark Knight?
I don't understand. Can I do 5 minutes on The Dark Knight? Let me think. I was just about to start rambling. I'm like, we'll just make it up as we go along, and I have to. I'm like, no, this is Batman. Batman deserves a bit more respect than just me winging it. But I would have a rough time being Batman and doing the voice at all times, the Christian Bale voice.
Yeah.
Because you gotta keep in character the whole time, and I feel like the Dark Knight points that out more than anything, because he's in the thing and he's like worried about Rachel and because this is what I asked Danny to do for the thumbnail was our episode today for people watching, Clay and I are just going to ask each other questions. Like we're just like all we're doing is like, hey, let's just gab for like the Golden Girls that we are for a couple of hours. But then Danny was like, well, what are you going to title the show? And I was like, well, let's just call it Where's Rachel, since we're just asking questions from that scene in The Dark Knight. And he's like, I love, let's make the thumbnail. But now we have to talk about The Dark Knight because of my dumb joke. Just that's the background context of everything. But then again, it does make me think about that scene in The Thing where he's like, "Where's Rachel?" Where blah 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 blah, but he's also Bruce Wayne, so like he's worried about the girl that he loves, and he can't just emote as Bruce Wayne. He has to emote as Batman, which must be tough psychologically. So Batman probably Bruce Wayne should maybe seek some therapy, I think.
Yeah, but if he cured him, I mean, then Gotham would just fall apart, right? Because he's really just holding it together by fighting the crime constantly. Or
then we get a whole movie about is Batman the cause of the crime? Or
exactly.
Yeah.
So
is Batman attracting all the weirdos to Gotham, and thus creating his own crisis?
Yeah.
Is he the one enacting the tariffs and then taking them away? And then saying, look, I solved the problem.
I think the thing I love the most about Dark Knight is the fact that the Joker went on a huge arc outside of the film. We saw makeup tests for Heath Ledger early on, and people were like, what the fuck is this? Like they were upset and just like, this is not right. This isn't the Joker. Everyone just has their own version of the Joker. And from that picture to the evolution of what he did in the film, to the point where it felt like the WB limited the Joker as a character's exposure, because I think the next time we got the Joker, it was on Gotham, and on Gotham, it became a virus. It became anything but then they kind of had one actor portray that, and he did a great job. I think, is it Cameron? I can't think of his name. I hate that. Yeah. But to take something that went from that bad to that good reminded me of when Michael Keaton was cast, because we didn't have internet back in the day, but there were news articles that blasted Keaton's casting as like Mr. Mom's going to be playing it. So we're going to get like the Adam West version.
Oh, Heath Ledger was like the gay cowboy. The gay cowboy guy is going to be the Joker.
Yeah. I love when an actor takes a role so well that it makes the company go, well, we're going to kind of hold on to this for a while. We don't want anyone to like make it different because it was so successful and it was an incredible portrayal.
Yeah. And obviously, definitely sad that he passed away. It does make me on my morbid end of my brain. I'm like, well, I guess that preserves the Joker, because they could have ruined it in the third movie, but
when they have someone that level, I always go like, but they'll want to make a sequel. There's a weird business proposition of comic books that go from A Dark Knight's Tale, Mike, with the drop. There's a weird thing, and you can see it in The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead was a great comic that had its run, became a show, and then AMC said, how much more can we get? How much more can we get? How much more can we get? And they keep bringing it out for everything. And there are 3 shows that aren't based on any comics. They're now, running to try to just, how much more can we get out of it for that show? Because they just took the popular characters and think, oh, well, people will follow that. But it's like, you get tired after a while.
I feel like if you're going to jump the shark, like go all the way. Give me Walking Dead babies, like give me, Walking Dead, the sitcom. Like, let's go all in, get as creative as you want to do it. Like, let's go nuts,
Modern Family, but in the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. What's it like to have to go get eggs when you live in a zombie apocalypse? You still have to. We live in it would be one of those things that would turn into like this. Oh, it's a commentary on capitalism, how these people still have to work their jobs during a zombie apocalypse.
Well,
But
but then
great.
we're Shaun of the Dead, though.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, then we're in Shaun of the Dead.
But
Yeah.
what if we had okay, now I go, okay, how much more money could I get? It would be a Walking Dead, but done by Edgar Wright sitcom and done in the vein of Spaced, where 20 somethings are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life in that world.
In that world. Yeah. I like it. I like it.
Yeah. I don't know who else could do a sitcom in that world that would be just as funny. Maybe Danny McBride or Ben Stiller or
Like like an Office style. Uh, that could be The Last of Us as well.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, but did you enjoy? Hey, are you watching The Last of Us?
I haven't seen the second season yet. I need to sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a bummer show. Like, it's not one that you sit down and be like, I'm gonna watch this and have a good time watching it.
Yeah.
This is you have to kind of. It's not like heart wrenching. Like, you're not watching Meryl Streep give up one of her kids or whatever. I don't know. Whatever is the worst thing you can think of. It's not that bad, but still, like, I'm just, sometimes I just rather watch something that's gonna make me laugh.
Yeah, because I that's what I've had to say. Like, whenever I'll get friends to go, have you watched the recent Last of Us? And it's like, I got to be in a mood. Like, I got to be prepared to go into that because it's like, it's very intense and stuff. And I think it was like Breaking Bad kind of broke me on TV because it was so intense. It was not a show I feel like you could binge or you would have a heart attack because it was just always on edge. But it got to the point where it was like he was such a dark character that you had to kind of take the show, a bit at a time,
Yeah.
So heavy at the end. Yeah. So
listen, I'd rather watch an Amazing Race episode.
I've been rewatching the Righteous Gemstones with my wife.
Oh, that's a good show.
She hasn't seen it, and we're almost to the end. We have like 2 episodes left, so I'm excited to finish it.
It's a great show.
Okay, so do you want to get into some questions here? Some of our comic book origins here. So, what was your first comic book, and how did you get into comics?
I got into comics mostly through television, I think. So we start off as a little child. Me, this is Jeff Hernandez lore. My mom once told me the first movie she ever took me to was Superman, the Christopher Reeve Superman. I would have been about 2 or 3 years old. I haven't done the math, but so in my head, I don't know if it's true or not, but in my head, I'm like, well, that's the path that you sent me down. This is your fault, really. Right? The first movie you take me to is Superman. Of course, I'm going to get into comics. I watched a lot of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends growing up, the Super Friends, loved them, and I would pick up random issues of comics. And I had to sit down and think about this. I think the first comic I ever owned, the first one I remember specifically getting was we were flying as a family to Florida. My mom ran into like a bookstore in the airport, and she picked up an issue of Daredevil from 1985. It was the Daredevil Secret Wars 2 tie-in. Daredevil's like cowering in the corner, and it's like the man without fear has fear, or something like that. I didn't know anything about Daredevil at the time, so I kind of was like, "What is this?" And I kind of flipped through it. And, it's Secret Wars 2. So it wasn't like the best comic in the world. But for whatever reason, that memory, because I was stuck on this plane with this one comic, it's just seared into my memory.
Yeah.
I do also remember owning Transformers #9 from July of 1985. That's the one with the it's like Starscream on the cover, and it's the girl in front of him who's like part cyborg kind of girl.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me because Superman 3 had just come out, and the one girl got swallowed by the machine, and she becomes part cyborg. And so, by little kid brain, they were the same character. But then I didn't really start collecting comics. Like, I'm going to pay attention to this one character every single month until about 1987. Iron Man and Captain America, roughly at the same time, within months of each other.
Oh, wow.
Iron Man was doing his first Armor Wars. Like, I literally picked up the second issue and just started reading from that point on. And Captain America it was in the middle of the Mark Gruenwald run, and he had just quit being Captain America and just reintroduced himself as the captain in the U.S. what would become the U.S. agent outfit, and he started traveling across America in a van, like a Grateful Dead, like he was following the Grateful Dead, and loved both of them. Picked them up and just read just those two pretty much exclusively until like the early '90s, maybe. And I would kind of pick up an issue of like the X-Men here, or Batman there, or whatever. But those two are the first two that I picked up. Like, I didn't know anything about comic schedules or anything, so it was literally just riding your bike to the bookstore. We didn't even have a local comic shop until maybe like 5 or 6 years after that. So we would just ride to the closest bookstore, like a B. Dalton bookstore, on our bikes, just randomly throughout the month, just to see what was new. So,
man, yeah, because I feel like just growing up in Dallas, I was grateful because we had Lone Star Comics, which had multiple locations. The best thing about comics in the 80s was the direct market and these comic shops that started to pop up. Dallas had a guy who started Lone Star Comics, so I lived in Rowlett, and Mesquite was the closest one. So it's funny because that's still my shop now, but it's Urban Legends, owned by Aaron, who worked for Lone Star Comics. He was one of the employees that when they decided to go online completely, he helped buy out that store so that he ran it. And what's really awesome is like the store basically was like, well, whatever's in the inventory, was part of the sell. And so he still like is cleaning out stuff. And he like a couple of years ago, he goes, "You won't believe what I found." He's like, "I'm still cleaning out Lone Star stuff." He pulls up this Bill Sienkiewicz 8x10 pencil of Moon Knight.
Oh my God.
That had just been laying around there. And I was like, holy shit. And he's like, oh, I got to get it framed and put up and everything. He was just so excited about just finding cool art and stuff like that back in the day. And then the Arlington Lone Star used to have quarter comic sales.
Oh, that's awesome.
Where and you probably can still find these comics in the area where Lone Star would ruin the comic by putting a stamp inside of it. And so it would have like Lone Star Comics and all the stores in there. And so it would devalue the comic to like, to 25 cents. So a lot of my collection, or I say collection, as I went through and reorganized through like using CLZ, I would pull out old comics so that I could note if they were autographed or if they were like a Lone Star stamp. And the Lone Star stamp appeared on most of my Daredevil Frank Miller run.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh, but I have the Frank Miller run. I open it up and I'd have this big Lone Star stamp inside of it. So first,
as time goes on, the rest of those Frank Millers will go away, and then as long as you keep yours pristine, that stamp's not going to matter less and less as time goes on, and then it'll start mattering more and more.
Yeah, and Lone Star would have like artists and writers in, and so like I got to meet Frank Miller as a kid, and so he did a signing I believe at Lone Star and at a convention, and that's where I first found that guy. You're always going to be in line with someone who's that guy who just takes up all the time and brings like boxes of stuff to sign. And I was behind a guy who had a long box of stuff for Frank Miller to sign. And he's like, "I'm going to sign like so many." He goes, "There's a kid behind you." And that was me. He goes, who's just sitting there with his few books. And so like I got my Wolverine limited series autographed by Frank Miller.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. And but it was just like nice because Frank Miller's like, hey, there's a kid here, and you're just here trying to get all your books you're just going to go sell.
Yeah, that's like if I were somebody famous and somebody brought me like a bajillion things to sign, I'm like, no, I'll sign like, I think there should be limits to like 5, 10 things tops, like even 10. I'm just like, what are you gonna do with 10 things signed?
Yeah, especially when it's like the same book. Like you got the same book 10 times, and then it's you're turning.
Then I'm like, oh, if there were 10 different things, I'd be like, maybe I get it. Because then whatever. But I don't know. That's terrible.
Hey, terrible. Danny, you already missed our Dark Knight segment. I'm sorry.
Danny, who's the most famous person you've seen so far?
Yeah. What's your panel plans? What are your autograph plans and your artwork plans? Like,
Danny is chatting us through the chat right now for those watching or just listening.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
20 issues of Battle
Battle
Beast.
Beast.
So he could, like, literally, as we're talking about him being the guy, to
He's
get,
that guy.
he's that guy. Danny's gonna sell all these Battle Beasts signed by Ryan Otley. And he's about to see Ashley Eckstein from
Ahsoka.
Ahsoka.
Oh
All
man.
right. Well, let us know if you get to meet Felicia Day.
Yeah.
That's the only one us two old guys care about.
Yeah. She's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was so you didn't have a comic shop, you said, until like 5 years? Like,
Well, when I was a little kid, so there was a comic shop. I grew up in Carrollton, which is a suburb of Dallas in the north, and just to the south there was Farmers Branch, the other suburb. They had a comic shop called Remember When,
oh
but
yeah.
I would have to get my parents to drive me to it because it was not within bike riding distance. And they would reluctantly agree to take me about every 6 weeks. It would be like my mom loved that I was reading, period, because apparently when I was a small kid, I just didn't read a lot. I didn't take the book, but then you put a comic in front of me, I'd just tear it up.
Yeah.
So she was like, she again was like, she'll feed that beast as long as I was reading. So they would take me and just be like, okay, we're gonna wait out in the parking lot. You have like 15 minutes, go nuts, kind of thing. Eventually they did open a baseball card / comic book shop that was way closer to me, that was definitely within bike riding distance. So once that opened up, that became my local shop. But I didn't like have my own home store until way until I was an adult. I would just go and randomly shop at random comic shops all around. So
yeah, there was an independent shop that was in Garland that my mom would drive me to. So once I discovered like when comic book day was, like, and got a pull list, I would start going there. And so but then that was the shop that I also was like buying Watchmen, off the shelf,
Oh, okay.
so,
Yeah.
and so, and then there was a shop in Mesquite called Dave's. And at Dave's, I was able to buy all my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles off the
that's
shelf.
cool.
So like I have pretty much all my turtle books are first print except for issue 1, which is like a third print.
Yeah.
And that's like probably the diamond in my collection are those, because
so that third print's pretty, because that first first print only had like, I don't know what, 1,200 prints or something like that. It was like printed at a Kinko's or something.
Yeah.
So and Remember When was a great shop. It was, and I found out later that I went to school with like one of the kids, like her parents owned it, and I was just like, oh my god, I can't believe, like I had no idea until like way later. And I was just like, what a crazy house to live in. Because Remember When it was a comic shop and a movie memorabilia shop.
Yeah.
So they had tons of like movie stills. This is back in the day, like you don't really see this anymore, but they would have movie kits that they would send out to like movie reviewers or whatever, just to try to movie theaters to try to get their movie sold. And they would come with all these movie stills and like information on the movie, just like little packets of stuff. And so they had a ton of these things, movie stills, just weird movie ephemera, movie posters, all kinds of stuff, and then just all these back issues of comics and giant cardboard cutouts and stuff like that. I love that shop. It was
amazing, because like you could go in and be like a fan of a movie, and it would be like a comic box of stuff. So you would go and be like, oh, here's Die Hard, and then there's, you've got pictures from Die Hard that are released by 20th Century Fox. Then you've got what are called like lobby cards, which were small advertisements, but then they could even be like the large posters. Like you could find posters that like you might not have ever seen before, or maybe only seen in Starlog or Fangoria, just
exactly. And they were like the real movie post. So the real movie, old school movie posters were like thick quality, and the image was reversed front and back. So you could see through like the light kind of stuff. So it was like,
because they'd be put in the window so you could advertise outside and inside.
Yeah. So it was really these great quality posters that you don't really see. I mean, maybe movie theaters still have them, but I don't know.
I think the last one I got like that was The Force Awakens. I have one that was like a preview poster that front and back that I went to, and I actually won at a screening because like they were like, tell your Star Wars story, like
Yeah.
what would it, and so
Okay, cool.
And so like I was like, well, I have the Star Wars tattoo because I have incredible memories of Star Wars, and I went through like lining up for Empire Strikes Back, like with my mom and my brother at North Park 1, and like the line went around the building. They wouldn't let you line up inside, and just having that was like one of my great family memories. And then when I was a stepdad, taking my stepson to go camp out for episodes 1, 2, and 3 here in Dallas, and we went from like we went from a theater that was like on the edge of Dallas to Plano, and just like Mike in chat, I met him at that lineup in '99. So
Oh, yeah.
like I just had like great memories of Star Wars and how it affected my life, and so I want a poster.
Great job.
Yeah. Do you remember your first convention?
I don't know if do I remember my first convention. I feel like it might have been. I think I told the story just last week. Maybe there was a convention up in Plano. The Heroes, the Image guys had just were about to return to Marvel to do the Heroes Reborn titles. And I talked to some guy from the Rob Liefeld Studios who completely was just like he was probably in his 20s at the time, just what's the line from I think it's Point Break, young, dumb, and full of cum, like it's just he was just like completely disinterested in anything like some little nerdy kid had to say. But it was still an exciting time because I was a young kid at a convention kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, not young, I was like in high school, but yeah.
Yeah, I got to go to Comic-Con in '97 for the first time. And the
like San
Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so like the hype of Image was so real. And I remember there was an artist who I don't want to call him out or anything, but like he purposely, like he had his badge and I saw him cover it up and lean to a guy. He goes, I can't walk around and just have people bother me, because it just covered up his name. And again, this is like, edge of the internet. Not everyone knew what everyone looked like. So
nobody knows who you are, Jim Valentino.
But yeah, he was like, he didn't want to be bothered, but like he was an up and coming artist who had been working on, very popular books for Image at the time. And just was like, people, the Image booth was insane. They would like throw out stuff and there was just crowds just, grabbing for like the swag that they had, and it was just like insane because you think about it now and it's like, it's funny because I think I still have some stuff that I got from their booth back then.
Oh, nice.
But '97 was insane. I went 2 other times, like I think 2003, 2006. And in 2006, it just was too big. Like, I think that was when it reached over 100,000 people a day. And
yeah, there's no way I would go to it now. Like, unless I were a celebrity of some sort, there's no way I would go to it.
Yeah, I mean, but like, I think the coolest part, just going within that time frame, was like I got to meet Kelly Sue DeConnick, I got to meet Matt Fraction, I get to meet, like you get to see a lot of cool people that you're just like in awe of. I have a comic from George Romero. George Romero had done Texas Frightmare Weekend, and the line was out you couldn't even see him. The line was so long. The only time I saw George Romero is when I was walking out of the bathroom and almost bumped into him because he's a very tall man. And you're like, oh yeah, that's George Romero. But he was at San Diego Comic-Con at a booth with no line. And I was just like, oh man, it's great to see you. Can I get an autograph? He's like, yeah. He goes like, because he was putting out a comic, I think through Avatar, that was based on Night of the Living Dead. He's like, you just have to buy a comic. And I was like, fuck yeah, I'll buy a comic. So like, got it signed, got a picture with him. I was just so excited.
That's awesome.
At the time, I was a big fan of Warren Ellis. He was there, I think, because of Avatar as well. He was doing Avatar books, and I got a bunch of stuff signed, and that's aged poorly. Uh, but like I love, I think at that point he had done The Authority, and I was a big fan of that book. So
he almost you have a question on here, and he almost made a list on one of your questions.
which
It was you asked we can get into this later, but you asked the top 5 all-time series, and his Planetary series I think is great. But he is also like, I'm like, kind of like a problematic guy. Like,
but I believe, but it's a team book. He may be the writer, but it's like I can't not recommend Derek Robertson's work on Transmetropolitan without Warren Ellis. I mean, it's just, but I will call it a Derek Robertson book because his art is just amazing. Like that book almost seems perfect for him, his style, his cyberpunk look and color. The color in that book's amazing. There's just so much to it, and it's tough because, like, when you have a creator who has issues, we'll say, I will defer to the artist, because then it kind of wrecks everything for the artist. I mean, I know that, like, when Warren Ellis got called out, like, he had a lot of books, he got canceled from Marvel, and so the artist like loses out on all that too. But when you have other works that are finished, why not recommend something like Derek's work on Transmetropolitan, John Cassidy on Planetary? Planetary is an amazing fucking book, and if, like, you're not in awe of every page you turn where you see Monster Island, or you see, a modern day version of Mjolnir. I mean, John Cassidy.
It's just a fun romp through the genre of comics. Fun may not be the right word, but it's a great romp through the just different kinds of genres.
And now that you say that, like, what are the books? Like, what are your top 5 all series? Because I would put Planetary in there as what I would say. Planetary is one I would recommend to people to read, because it's what is it, 28 issues? It's not that long.
It's not very long, and small cast of characters, and it is just kind of a weird, in its own way, an overview of different, like, you get a Fantastic Four kind of story. There's a oh gosh, I can't remember his name. The old school
Man of Bronze.
Man of Bronze. I can't remember his name, but there's like a story about that guy. There's a Monster Island story. There's all these, like, there's
Doc Savage.
Yeah. So there's all these, like, classic characters. There's like a Zorro character in there that they kind of visit as these. They themselves are kind of like the challengers of the unknown, where they're exploring the kind of a multiverse kind of scenario kind of thing. Just a fun comic, but it did not make the top 5. It got an honorable mention. My top 5 series are, in no particular order, Jonathan Hickman's run on the Fantastic Four. It's the only thing I've read multiple times, and I also like his Avengers run that ends in the reboot of the whole Marvel comics. But the Fantastic Four run just rings, I don't know, there's something more personal to it for me. Okay. Not for me, but I feel like for him as well. So I enjoyed that run a lot. Grant Morrison's JLA run, I think that just came at a formative time in my youth of reading comics, and I think Grant had a lot of fun throwing those characters together. And it really been the first time since the Golden Age that they'd all been thrown into the same book together. It shaped a lot of what I knew about the DC universe. Mike Allred's The Atomics, also another, like, formative book from my youth. A bunch of weird, it's kind of like an X-Men book, sort of. Just a bunch of weird mutant characters drawn by Mike Allred, but they're also, like, beatnik poets, so I love the idea of it. Mark Russell's Flintstones for DC. I did not know you could do that with the Flintstones. He tells these incredibly powerful stories using these characters, that are caveman cartoon characters. And Runaways by gosh, I can't remember his name. Vaughn, Matthew Vaughn, No, not Matthew
Brian
Vaughn.
Vaughn, Brian K. Vaughn.
Brian K. Vaughn. Yeah, Runaways, the original Runaways by Brian K. Vaughn. Love that book. That book's
Yeah,
great.
that is a fun book. Yeah, because it's weird because it's like a Marvel book that doesn't really have any Marvel connections for a long time. Like you just had these kids who, are dealing with their parents, and their parents are these villains that aren't necessarily like huge villains or anything. But like when your parents are villains, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, it does that great thing of like you're all kids and you hate you have a reason to hate your parents now because you find out they're supervillains. It takes place out on the West Coast, so like zero Marvel superheroes are involved because they're all on the East Coast. But they do pop up eventually. The artwork in it is great. I think it's Alfonso, I think, that does that first arc.
Oh yeah.
And all the characters are great. Most of them are still around in some form or fashion. And it's just a fun. I like a good teenager comic book where like all the characters are teens.
Yeah.
I love the New Warriors growing up and New Mutants and
Oh God, I love the New Mutants. That was like my book. And then you go on like this run for 2 years, and then Bill Sienkiewicz takes over the art, and you're like blown away because this guy's doing this kid comic book that is just not it. The art's like nothing you've seen in anything else, unless like you've probably read Moon Knight. So like you go from this dark noir comic to these kids who fight the Demon Bear. He does the Demon Bear saga, just. And being a big Nightcrawler fan, like Nightcrawler shows up in issue 23, and I see Nightcrawler trying to interact with Rain, and Rain, who has such a, body image issue because she's a werewolf. And then, and she's also like this Catholic who's trying to deal with those issues, running to a person who looks like a demon, but he's using the danger room to connect with her. And then when it turns off and she sees what he really looks like, she's horrified, she can't deal with the idea that he could just be a decent person, but look like a demon.
Marvel should do a Catholic, like a book with like Nightcrawler, Daredevil, Wolfsbane,
just Catholic guilt.
Just Catholic guilt all about.
Well, and then that makes me curious too, does modern day Nightcrawler, who's come from the Krakoa era where he was establishing his own religion as a mutant, go back to Catholicism, especially after he's died too, because he has seen the afterlife. Like he had a run where he had died and come back, and before the Krakoa era. And so he knows that like heaven exists and stuff, but like during Krakoa, knowing that mutants can live forever, that they start to establish a new religion. So I'm always curious where the direction he's going.
I'm going to say he's going to go straight back to Catholicism, but that's more of a Marvel editors being chicken to do anything to push these characters forward, rather than just a smart character choice.
Yeah, just a big giant undo.
Yeah. What about you? What are your top five series?
Starman. Starman was. I mean, I think, and what's wild is you go, well, Starman came out in the 90s, and it was about a guy who's obsessed with older stuff. If you did Starman now, he could be obsessed with like 80s stuff. Like it's that far back.
He is the penultimate Gen X superhero. Like, refused to wear a costume. This is James Robinson's Starman we're talking about.
Yes, and Tony Harris for half of it, and then who did the back half of that art?
I don't know.
Okay.
He owned an antique store, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
And he did not want to be a superhero. He inherited the title from his father, who did not want him to be. He had issues with his brother, who was supposed to be Starman, but ended up, dying. So he inherited the mantle that he did not want. It is so Gen X, that character. It is fantastic.
Yeah, he is the most reluctant hero. Like that's the thing that I really loved about him is he just didn't really have any he didn't relate to his dad on any level. He didn't relate to his brother. He goes through this trauma of his brother dying, trying to be this hero. Jack Knight goes through a lot of shit. Like Jack Knight is also taken in by the Mist, who drugs him and has sex with him to have his baby. Like it's just like there's some wild stuff that happens in that book, but then there's great standalone issues where a guy comes to Jack's store to buy a shirt, and that shirt is like magical, you know, like and just one of my favorite runs. I got into comics through X-Men, or really it started at Star Wars. I went to Lone Star Comics at Town East Mall to get Star Wars comics because I heard that they were doing, you know, comics based on the movie, and I was like, I love Star Wars, I want more. Everyone there was like X-Men, 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 and the Paul Smith run of X-Men is like between 170 and 180 something, but I bought 180, which is like it is just an issue about Storm and Kitty Pryde. Storm, who had come back and had become like this, had this punk look to her. She had gone from like this goddess that Kitty had seen during the Dark Phoenix saga to having this mohawk and leather and stuff. And so the whole issue is just her talking about appearances and who people are inside. And I was just like, well, this is really good. I like this. Like, I'm really kind of interested in where this is going, because it wasn't just this big, slugfest. Which is what you expect in most comics to attract a kid. But then like at 180, like I'm really like I've become this Storm fan. And then you had Life Death with Barry Windsor Smith art. Life Deaths, is the story of Forge and Storm, and Forge has built this device. I mean, people will recognize the story from X-Men 97, where Forge had built this device that takes Storm's powers, and she falls in love with him, not knowing that he's the inventor of this. Forge is a great character. Has been misused a lot of the time. I really love to see him used in the or used in one of the films and really go into his history, because he also has like some magical talent as well because of his Native American history. But X-Men Dark Phoenix Saga, I'm one of those guys. I'm a basic bitch. I love that run. I got into that. I have 2 trades. I have my original trade somewhere that was just falling apart because I would reread it over and over again, which got me into, Chris Claremont and John Byrne. John Byrne, another complicated creator for some of his racist tirades, but I was a huge fan of his art. We didn't know how awful some of these people were at the time.
But one of the questions you asked was the first creator you started to follow, and I had to think about it. And I was like, I think it might be John Byrne was the first one that I kind of would follow around, because I think as a kid I followed the art first before following the writers, because the art is the thing that pops off the page, obviously, as a kid, and I really liked the way John Byrne drew. And so I tore into it. Like, he did that long Namor run book, and so I read all that, and then I would go back and like pick up a random Fantastic Four issue that he did back in the day, a random Cap issue that he did back in the day, and so I would try to keep up with whatever he was doing, not really knowing what would come down the road, from him. So
I got it would be Claremont Byrne. Like, I would read Claremont did some novelizations or did some novels with George Lucas, I remember at the time. And then I was looking for like Byrne's work, and Byrne went on to do Fantastic Four. So like that's my Fantastic Four run, is like, his take on his take on Sue. Like, Sue kind of becomes a badass in a couple of issues. He does The Thing, so I get to read The Thing solo. His She-Hulk, who's breaking the fourth wall. So I was like, this is cool stuff. Like, I didn't understand what the fourth wall was. So it's like those story devices that you learn as a kid, were incredible because Claremont and Byrne were a great team, even though they were at odds. Because I really love that Dark Phoenix saga, and I really hate that that's become the one that they keep trying to translate to film and fail over and over again. Like, it just bums me out because I want to see the battle in space. I want to see everyone stand by Jean and what it means to Scott, you know, and Jean's, you know, we've seen, you know, Jean deal with it in 2 films, and maybe X3 is kind of close because she's trying to cope, you know, with both sides of being possessed and her being brought back from the dead. But I just haven't seen it done well. Like, I would say maybe the cartoon has done it the best.
I think the cartoon does it really well. The
Yeah, because they actually they go to space and they do the battle. They do the thing. Other, like, maybe Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol would probably be another one. But it's weird because it's like one of my top 5, and I always go like but a lot of these are out of reach for first-time readers, you know? Like, I definitely wouldn't recommend Doom Patrol to a first-time comic reader because his take is so weird, but it was really well adapted into the TV show. So if, like, people dug the TV show, I would definitely recommend they read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, God Love Man Kills was like a great X-Men story. But see, that was told outside because that was in a graphic novel. Marvel started doing these oversized magazine size trade-like books. Would you call it?
I got one right here.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I got one right here. I see it right here.
I was gonna say I have some, but I think they're in the other room. I have like the Byrne She-Hulk, Frank Miller's Daredevil, which is really like a Kingpin story.
So this would be
That's it.
Man Kills. This is a great book. I mean, and it definitely ranks up there. I mean, it's just, I feel like the things that, like the Hickman run is like 100 issues of Fantastic Four comics.
Yeah.
This definitely shaped how I thought about the X-Men though, because this is really early X-Men for me, and it was this and the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends episode with the X-Men, and the X-Men at the State Fair of Texas comic that we got for free. Living in Texas, so that's like all my early X-Men like knowledge and lore. The other 2 ones I have are this Emperor Doom by David McLean. This is a fantastic book, a kind of condensed version of what's happening in the Marvel universe right now, and of course the death of Captain Marvel.
Yes, no one can defeat cancer.
Nope,
not even Captain Marvel.
It's goated.
Yeah. God, what would be? I feel like I leave out a lot of DC because I'm such a Marvel zombie. The Justice League for me would be, I can't believe it's the Justice League. You know, the
Mateus,
Giffen stuff from back in the day. The Punch. You know, that team that wasn't A-listers.
Yeah,
because you just, everyone that wants to do the Justice League wants to do A-listers. And I kind of love the fact that the Justice League I mean, Gunn doesn't love A-listers. He loves guys like the Guardian. So it's like taking a guy like Guy Gardner and he's going to be one of your heroes. I'm very curious how that's going to go. So
we might be lucky that if he doesn't do like the Detroit team first right off the bat.
Oh, man.
Detroit JLA.
Who all was in that? Shit. Who was that? Now I'm
Aquaman, Vibe, Gypsy, Steel. I don't remember who else. I think Martian Manhunter was part of it. He's like, you can always put him on a Justice League team. He's going to be there.
Yeah. But I also agree with your JLA pick because like Grant Morrison's, I feel like Grant Morrison's JLA run is something that you could give first-time readers, which is really rare for a Grant Morrison book who likes to really go into the lore and mythology. But like, isn't that first run he shows like Green Arrow is the hero who has to save the rest of the Justice League in that book?
So the very first arc is only a 4-issue arc, which is weird because it's such a small, quick little run. They deal with white Martians.
Yeah.
This is also where we first see, I think this is where a lot of people credit like the God level Batman, because Batman's like always the smartest one in the room in this run. And he's always got it figured out. He's always like 4 steps ahead of everybody or whatever. But we get so Green Arrow shows up, and it's Green Arrow's kid, Connor. I don't remember what his name
Yeah,
is.
it's Connor.
Yeah, because Ollie's dead at the time, and it's a great issue because it's him and his art, and Connor goes up to they're on a satellite. He goes up to the satellite to kind of audition or interview for his position in the Justice League. He's friends with Kyle Rayner, who's the Green Lantern at the time, also on the Justice League. So Kyle gets him kind of into the Justice League. He goes up without any of his arrows, or his arrows get destroyed right away because the Justice League are being attacked by the Key, and he has to use his dad's like trick arrows that are all
Yes.
like the net arrows and the handcuff arrows. And Connor just learned with like arrows. Like he doesn't know how to use any of these things, and it's such a great little. And this is what I love about the Grant Morrison run is because he kind of blends the old school, like the Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman moving around, and then he kind of folds in Wally and Kyle, and then Connor, like these newer characters, the legacy characters, and they have a beautiful blend together.
Yeah.
And it's just such a fun run.
Yeah, I want to put Grant Morrison's X-Men run up there, but Frank Quietly's art is constantly being filled in by other artists during that run, so it bums me out because like it'll be Frank Quietly for a while, then you get someone who filled in and it looks really rough and the inks are really bad and it bums me out, even though the story's
There's also
great.
the problematic Evan Van Sciver, who's part of that run.
Yeah, he does one of the. And I really feel like that issue is just inked poorly because I know his art is better than that, but it is just a rough looking book. But
yeah, there's some rough issues in that, but it's also another, and it's I love that run as well, and it is a run that I'm currently trying to complete because I had it at one point, and then through moves and just random things, you lose pieces of your collection, but.
Probably another one. I mean, just because it's an odd Marvel book, like, obviously because of the Howard the Duck tattoo. Howard the Duck had a huge influence on me as a kid because the movie, it was a run that was really short, and so I believe I was at like just a random comic book store that had all the magazines, and so I was like, oh well, I'll collect all the magazines. And the magazines were made because they didn't use the Comics Code Authority. So I'm like, 12 or 13, and that has like Howard and Beverly hooking up in the book, and I'm like really going, what? This is confusing.
Like the duck boobs in the movie.
Exactly, but these were like bevs, like Howard wasn't necessarily cruising for like other ducks, because he does revisit Duck World. But I actually, there's a great story in there. Bill Mantlo, I believe, wrote the whole run of the magazine, but Howard revisits Duck World and sees that they've created a religion around him and they're using his name to make money. And he sees like everyone, like the parody of modern day religion was really funny, but I didn't get it until I was a lot older. Like there's stuff in there that I was like, oh, well, this is weird, okay. But then the movie came out and I thought, well, this will be weird because like he's gonna hook up with this woman in here because that's what's in the comics. And
you knew going in.
And so then I'm like, see, they're showing boobs at the beginning, even though they're duck boobs, but that's still, I'm like going, what is going on here? This is weird. But then like that helped teach me comedy in the sense of like, well, the stuff that Steve Gerber was doing was more like satire and parody comedy. And what the movie was more slapstick. Like you had to just kind of like the original idea of the movie was a cartoon that was adapted to live action because George Lucas goes, well, we can do live action. I made the Star Wars. You might have heard of it. And so he dedicated ILM to making this duck that didn't work all the time, And R.I.P. Ed Gale. He passed this week. He was one of like, I believe there's 9 different people who manned the duck suit in Howard the Duck, and Ed Gale was the one who did most of it. They had a kid who appeared in the suit that couldn't handle being in the suit, that was claustrophobic. They had a stunt worker. They had puppeteers. They had all these different people to help man Howard the Duck. But Ed Gale was probably did the most scenes. And he's also known for Chucky, and he passed away this past week. So rest in peace, bud. You know, I'll always remember you as Howard the Duck. But putting together those runs affected me as a kid, because it was like I was able to collect a whole run of Howard the Duck that I believe only had like 29 issues at the time. I believe when the movie came out, they did a couple more, thinking it's going to be big. Let's do this comic. And it lasted like 2 more issues because of the movie. But I don't know if I could recommend Howard the Duck to like a new reader. It's just kind of a weird thing that I think existed back in the day. And one of the other great myths about it that I read, that Steve Gerber was the one who created the hype behind Howard the Duck running for president. Like he created these buttons and so it's like he created like a buzz before, you know, for himself.
Yeah.
Promote his own things. I don't know, was there other, we didn't have a lot of independent books. I mean, 80s became a big independent book back in the day. Like now people can self-publish and it's a lot easier. Were there independent books? Do you remember? I mean, you read Atomics. That was, you know, Mike Aldred, and he's coming off of Mad Men.
Yeah, so a lot of mine are probably more early 90s. I read a lot of what I was going to say before we do that, like another series that is great, like Why the Last Man, probably would have been up there on my list, or is up there on my list. But I read a lot of like Oni Press stuff. Blue Monday, I really like Blue Monday comics.
Yeah, those are so fun.
Yeah, and I wish I know the creator China Flores still works. I think she does like a lot of young adult books now, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they'd go back to doing some Blue Monday books, because I dug them out recently and I was kind of flipping through them. I'm like, oh, I really like these.
I think Oni did an omnibus of her work and collected all those.
Oh, really? I've seen like, I know they have like little young adult reader versions of them. I've seen like pop up at half price and stuff.
Yeah.
And I look for them whenever I'm in a new comic shop, just kind of start like whatever. I think I have most of them already, so I'm not really missing that many of them. Hopeless Savages, another Oni Press, also from around the same time. A lot of Andy Watson is a British author, cartoonist who did Breakfast Afternoon and Love Fights.
Slow News Day.
Slow News Day. Yeah, I picked up all of those. Yeah, I tried to get into some early indie comics, but most of it was probably after Image had come out. So like, you know, by that point, indie comics were already kind of on the map. They were as indie movies were by that point. So
Innovation Comics. Do you remember Innovation?
I do remember Innovation Comics. Yeah. I don't think I have any, but I can look at the CLZ and find out if I do have any Innovation.
Yeah, I also like CLZ. When you open it, you can shake it and it'll pull up like a random comic that you have in your thing. Yeah, it's a neat little part of the app, because there's a guy I follow on Blue Sky that he'll do his CLZ shake of the day and just pull up a book and tell you all the details on it.
That's interesting.
Eclipse Comics in the 80s was putting out Marvel Man, Miracle Man, whatever you want to call it at the time, because I believe it was like another problematic creator Neil Gaiman was doing at the time that people were talking about. I think he had just taken over from Alan Moore. And so people were talking about that. And so I was like, well, I got to get an Eclipse comic. So I bought Airboy, which was kind of a pulpy action hero, this kid that flies this plane, and the books for 50 cents. So as a kid, I'm like, I get a whole comic for 50 cents. Now it wasn't 23 pages, but it had great art, it had great stories. And so Eclipse was really neat in the stuff that they were putting out. And the people that ran it, Kat Urandu and I can't remember the guy's name. I hate that it's going to bother me. We're always at the conventions. So I would go to these panels to see like, what are they doing next? I was always excited because it was like, they weren't doing superhero stuff. Like, you know, Airboy was something that I had no idea what it was. The Heap was in it, which was like pre-Man Thing, pre-Swamp Thing. He was like the first swamp creature. I'm trying to remember a few of their other titles. But those were the big ones that stood out as far as independent books. And then when Dark Horse started showing up, you know, you start seeing like, well, what are they doing next? Because they were doing stuff that was outside the superhero realm as well. So I always loved to see what was the, as a kid, you know, from the 80s into the 90s was like superhero. But then the 90s become Image and the speculator boom. What was the worst thing you saw during the speculator boom of the 90s?
Ooh, that's a tough question. What is the one like I feel like the most egregious thing. So for a while they were coming out with special covers like every 3 issues for comics. There's an issue of Fantastic Four that is a embossed cover. It's got Human Torch on it's pretty famous. Human Torch is on the cover, and it's like he goes supernova in the comic. So it's a straight white cover with an embossed Human Torch on it. And
I know this one.
Yeah. Nothing really happens in the comic. Like 3 issues prior, there was another like an anniversary issue like 3 issues prior. I think there was one like 2 issues after that, and I was just like, there's no reason for this. I still bought it, of course, but like after I got home, I felt suckered, and I was like, and I'm sure that if the cover price is like $3 for it now or whatever, but back then it's like a $7 comic or whatever, and all you're getting is just like a generic Fantastic Four with like this fancy cover. Again, today it doesn't, because every single comic has 5 different covers. One of them's a foil. Like they're all incentives, and some of them are $15, and we all just eat it up now. But back in the day, it was kind of unheard of, and it just felt. I was like, oh, okay, so now we're in the full-on money grab, like kind of thing.
You had titles that were selling million copies, and people thought, I'm a collector and I own one of these, and it's like, and it's really not worth anything. I had friends that were on the fringe of comics. So it was like, you know, when they got interested in the people that had a lot of hype, like Rob Liefeld doing X-Force. And so they were really into X-Force book, Spawn. But I had friends that it just cracked me up because they go, you know, I got that Death of Superman book still bagged. It's in a safety deposit box because it's going to pay for my kid's college. And I was like,
it might pay for some French fries. I remember like those things sold millions and millions of copies, and I feel like at the time I heard because there were a lot of people who were like, I'm gonna buy all this, and you know, again, because something had just sold on the market for like a whole bunch of money. It was like an early Captain America or whatever. So that's why everybody was like, oh, we're going to buy all these, and then, you know, in 20 years cash out. And I feel like I remember somebody saying like, well, a lot of those old comics are not around anymore because they're from World War II. A lot of those early comics were recycled, scrapped for the war effort, whatever. Collect your tin, collect your paper, whatever. And then, of course, there was the big comic purge of the 50s where people were just burning comics left and right. And so it's rarity that makes those old comics so expensive. And there are hundreds and millions of, you know, issues of Superman, and people were saving them, so none of them went extinct. Like they're not rare at all.
Yeah.
And it bugs me to see so many speculators. I'm not a speculator guy. It took me until 2 years ago before I was finally convinced that I should bag and board all my comics to begin with. Like I have no interest in selling them, you know, for whatever. I love my comics. I want to keep them. I want to read them. Like I'm going to flip through them as many times. My grubby little fingers are going to be on every single issue.
Yeah.
So they're all reader copies to me. So whenever I see people like, you know, oh, buy this because it's the first appearance of so-and-so, I'm like, that's not going to do anything for you. Like I've been in the business too long. I've been around too long to like Star from Captain Marvel that was introduced 5 years ago. We've not seen her since, like. But I remember like 5 years ago, people were like, "You got to get this, pick it up. It's a speculator book, new character created by Kelly Thompson, new Captain Marvel villain, gonna be huge," and we haven't seen him since. So
yeah, there was a kid at my first shop who had unlimited money, so every number one that came out was always in his pull list because Turtles had done so big that's I remember that wave of like, well, any independent book was usually a low print run and could be the next Turtles. So you saw Biker Mice from Mars, you saw like all the takeoffs,
radioactive hamsters, teenage hamsters, or whatever that one was.
Yeah, there was like 4 or 5 different riffs on the Turtles, which the Turtles was a riff on Daredevils, so it was just funny to see people just like going, crazy buying stuff. And then in the 90s really pushed the numbers into the millions. I'm pretty sure Spawn #1 sold over 1 million. That was another book. It was just the Image books were insane because a book would come out that week. Next weekend it would be behind up on the wall for $20.
Yeah.
Based on nothing other than the shop owner's idea of like, I think I could sell this for 20 because I sold out of my stock last week and this is the only one I have. And that's when you saw a lot of the direct market stores become these kind of shitholes.
Yeah.
I mean, run by guys who were just greedy and mean, and you could always hear these stories about guys running these shops that you would go in that were dark and damp and they were rude to the customers because they had a regular flow of people that came in, but they didn't want the one-off guy coming in to buy a comic or two. They really only, acknowledged the people that had a pull list. I know I shopped at one of those in Denton. There was a guy in Louisville who was a terrible person, that I got comics from, but that's what I really hated about the speculation market was the collectability and just, that kind of shit.
Yeah. I feel like I've been pretty lucky. I mean, I'm a guy, so it's different for different people, but like lucky with going into comic shops and being treated fairly, I guess. I don't really go into like, now I know exactly, again, look at me. I know exactly what I'm doing when I walk into a comic shop. But like back in the day, like I didn't have anybody that was particularly mean to me, like when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I don't think I asked a lot of questions though, so maybe I just wasn't annoying enough.
Yeah. Let's see here. You got any other questions in here you want to hit on?
Yeah, let me see here. I'm gonna jump back to this because I forgot to mention this. When you asked about my con experience when I was talking about I did go to a fan expo 5 or 6, 7, 8 years ago or whatever it was. Jim Lee was in town. His daughter was about to go to college, and one of the colleges she was looking at was SMU here in Dallas. I went to SMU, and so he was like, yeah, he was just like up there in his little. I was at his panel, and he was up there drawing a Batman or whatever. And he's like, "Oh, my daughter's in town. Is anybody, she's looking to tour SMU. Does anybody know anything about SMU?" And I like raised my hand. I was like, "That's where I went to school." And he's like, "Come and see me after the show or whatever, after the panel." And so he was like, "Hey, did you like SMU?" And it was like a minute conversation about. I was like, yeah, I loved all my professors. I was an art major there, kind of thing. And
nice.
Yeah, and that was it. He had to move on to do other things, but it was just like, I was like, yeah, it's a great. All the professors, and one of his kids did eventually go to SMU because he's posted pictures at SMU with his kids. So I'm assuming it was that kid. So,
SMU money. Wow.
Yeah, he definitely has SMU. I do not. I'm still paying for it.
Man, yeah, SMU is a few bucks. A comic that made you cry. I like this question. I would say the closest comic for me, The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man. That is one of my favorite Spider-Man stories of all time. It's a standalone story. I don't want to spoil it for anyone because it's just such a great Peter Parker moment. I've wanted to film that as a fan film for so long because I just believe it's just a really beautiful story. It's like what a hero is that isn't just a big slugfest kind of thing.
Yeah, the issue where Ultimate Peter Parker dies. Peter Parker, Ultimate
Yeah.
Spider-Man 160, I think it is, or whatever it is. That's
Yeah.
kind of that one will put a lump in your throat, put a lump in my throat. And then there's a Fantastic Four issue during the Hickman run. They kill off Johnny Storm in the middle of the Hickman run. It's interesting the way they do it, because from a reader perspective, they leave it open enough to where you know he may not be dead,
Yeah.
as the reader. But when you see it from the Fantastic Four family perspective, they're like, oh, he's obviously gone. And that next issue is pretty much a silent issue. There's almost no language, no words in it. It's the art is by Nick Dragotta, and it's about the Fantastic Four in mourning. You see pictures on the internet of where Thing and Hulk and Thor are fighting like in the desert, because Thing is just so wrought with guilt because he couldn't save Johnny and he needs to let the anger out. There's a moment where Sue goes to console, or Reed goes to console Sue, because she's, her brother's dead, and she puts this invisible force field around her, and his hand just kind of goes around the force field because she doesn't want to be touched or anything. It's like it's such a gut wrenching issue.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's a great issue. That one made me definitely tear up.
Let's see here. What is your white whale comic or collectible that you hope to acquire one day? I
come out with big guns.
Yeah, I mean, I think my goal since I was a kid is to put an entire Uncanny X-Men run together. And I've been able to get Giant Size X-Men 1 and 94. So really at this point, I have a few issues between 1 and 94, but probably be the first 5 X-Men. Like, I mean, as far as a white whale, it's completing that run, completing that collection. So it's like getting that first issue. And like, I hate to say, like, I wouldn't want like a bad graded one, but I'd want a fairly decent one.
Yeah,
I would want them in good condition, but I also don't want them graded. Like, I want to be able to pull the book out and read it. I'm not a graded guy. I don't believe in grading comics because they're meant to be read. If you want to have something posted on the wall, buy some original art or a print from an artist. I mean, and do that, because you can get covers, or like I've done. I've gotten tattoos of artwork I love. I have Days of Future Past tattooed on my leg. I
nice.
love that. Is like one of my favorite all-time covers. I mean, it's John Byrne, and as a kid that story affected me. I went back and reread it, and it hits different, but for me as a kid, I always thought of like that 15-year-old Kitty Pryde going to a future that is just so apocalyptic, and having to kind of absorb the idea of like, how do I, how can I change the world? That's what I always thought. It is a Wolverine heavy story, but for me, it was the journey with Kitty Pryde. Like, and I've loved that art on that. That cover is just fucking amazing. Your white whale?
I don't know. I came up with a question and I immediately was like, I don't know if I have an answer to this one. I feel like there are things that are obscure that I'm just like, oh, I would love to have that, and I don't know how I would get my hands on it. So the Marvel used to have the Fabulous Friends of Marvel Society, not the Merry Marchings thing, but there was another one. Foom. Yeah, Foom. So if you signed up to get Foom, you got a poster in the mail that was like a Foom poster that had a bunch of just things, and I've seen them on eBay here and there, but I would like to get one of those. My hands on one of those. Like, I like ephemera. Like, there's like, I need Runaways #1 by Brian K. Vaughan. Like, there's a bunch of like key issues that I need to fill my holes. Please cut that. Please cut that and clip it and let everybody see it. But I don't know if I'd call them I don't know if those white whales would definitely fill my holes in my heart. But like seeing weird stuff like old Foom magazines, like that stuff where I'm like, Yeah, like Atari for like weird things that like not everybody wants, but like they seem really interesting. I love collecting Marvel Ages.
Oh yeah, I have. I think I still have the first one.
Yeah. I've like every time I find a Marvel Age, I'll pick it up. But yeah, old ephemera are my favorite things. Like yeah, and one of those old Foom posters would be super cool to own.
Yeah, so we were talking before the show because because Jeff saw these Atari Force. He goes, "Do you have Atari Force?" And I was like, "Yeah." So my ex-wife stole like a box of my comics that were like my A run of like, and I had Atari Force, I had Avengers in there. So like Avengers Annual 10 is a big comic, and that's gone. But like I was like, well, I love those. It had the George Perez run,
Mm-hmm.
and I lost those. But like oddly, Atari Force was a book where I go, I love this art, and I would start drawing. I started drawing based on this comic because I was just such a fan of the work on it. And yeah, it's just one of those odd books that like I'm looking for all of them. And luckily, yesterday when I was at my shop, Urban Legends, Aaron had bought some Atari Force because he knew I was looking for them, and so I filled in everything but one issue. I'm missing one issue to complete that run, and that's kind of the thing I'm questing for. Is there anything you're actively looking for to complete a run, or?
Oh, I've got multiple things that I'm trying to complete. So that George Perez Avengers run is like the from after the heroes like reborn stuff. So it was the George Perez Kurt Busiek run, really Kurt Busiek, George Perez run. I've got a bunch of those that I'm trying to complete. I don't have all of the Grant Morrison JLR run, but I've got most of it. So I got a handful of issues here and there. What else? I have it on my list here. The Morrison X-Men run. I've got most of that, but I'd like to finish that. I've got most of it. I feel like most of the stuff from my youth I've got. Again, I'm missing like Biggie. So I have a lot of the I don't have all of the original New Mutants run. I've got like the pieces that are kind of important to me. So like I really started reading from like kind of Fall of the Mutants through Inferno during like all that Brett Blevins kind of doing the art and stuff like that. I read like most of that stuff. And then I kind of lost the thread for a little bit. And then when Liefeld comes in and picks it up, like I kind of picked it up from then on. But I'm missing like the big issues. I'm missing where Cable comes in. I'm missing where Deadpool comes in. Those are like always going to be the hardest, most expensive ones to get.
I gave Daniel my first appearance at Deadpool.
So that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, because I had a couple of books and that I knew like, well, it means more to him than me, and so like I had some Rocketeers that I gave to Josh because like they mean more to him. Like he's just a huge fan. So,
but I was lucky enough to kind of hold on to the stuff that I really enjoyed, or I've been able to replace it. So like again, the New Warriors, love that first run. The New Warriors, and I have the first 25 issues. And that's really all I'm interested in, because I think after that the creative team changes, and after that, almost the first full burned run on Namor. I've got most of those. I think my problem is that something that I don't have anything of that I would like to read, like Walt Simonson's Thor. I don't have any of those issues, but I've always wanted to read them. Not always, but most recently kind of like I should read those because I hear they're good, and so part of me is like when I see them and I'm flipping through, I'm like, should I pick them up? I don't have any of them, but logically I should just go get a book, like an omnibus that has them all, because that would probably be way easier, maybe in the long run even cheaper. I don't know. It might be 6 of one, half a dozen together, but like that's how I should get it because it'd be more convenient, certainly.
Yes.
But then I'm like, it's right here. It's right in front of me. It's $1, like nobody's gonna, kind of thing. So that's my biggest thing is when I see something that I want to read, but I know it's going to take forever to collect, and I should just go get an omnibus of it. But
that's what I did with Jason Aaron's store. Was I got an omnibus, and it was and just being able to go through it that way and read the whole thing is so amazing. Yeah. It's one that I should do a reread of more often. I used to have like books that I would reread every year. I'd do the Dark Knight Returns. I would do the Authority, Miller's run and Ellis's run. because I felt like really at the turn of the century, that was like even though we had dark comics, like I'm reading all the dark stuff at that time that was coming out, and in anything Garth Ennis, like, you know, Preacher and his stuff. But like now, I don't know. Like I haven't gone back to reread stuff just because I have just so much stuff that I haven't read. So
that's kind of where I'm at. Like as I'm getting older, I'm like, oh, I gotta hurry up and read these things before I die. You know, kind of like where I'm like, I don't have time to go back and reread some of the things I want to reread. This is a big issue when it comes to comic book club picking books and stuff like that. Because I'm like, sometimes the group, I'm like, Danny and I are part of a comic book club up in Louisville.
Yeah.
And whenever we have to choose the book, I'm always like, it's either got to be something I've read before, so I don't have to bother reading it again, something I want to read. But if they choose something I don't want to read, and I'm like, I better be good, because now you're messing up with everything. Like, do you have anything that you want to read before it's all, before it's all said and done?
Yeah. I've always said that if I ever got to the point where I could retire and I could just go sit on a beach and read a book, though, I would read Dune. I probably wouldn't read a comic. I've always wanted to sit and read Dune, and I don't think I have the faculties with life in the way right now to read just that standalone novel, not even go any further, but just to read
just the first book.
Dune. Comic wise, I think I've always wanted to go through Lee and Kirby's FF. I've never gone all the way through that. I've kind of wanted, I mean, this is not reading it more than rereading. I've kind of want to make an annotated Steve Gerber's Howard the Duck, where I go through the entire book and note things that he's either parodying or a person or things he's referencing, because that book is so old now that people aren't going to get some of the stuff that he's talking about unless he's like parodying things that are still out of control, government, religion, things like that. I've been doing Steve Gerber's Man Thing. That's been my, but I've been reading the essentials. So I'm just reading a black and white, which works for that book because, it kind of is like a horror book in a way. So I've
always wanted to read the Steranko Shield stuff. I've never even seen any of that stuff in the real world,
Yeah, I've never read that. Wait a minute. I think I did read the Scorpio first arc. I think we did for Comic Book Club, because we have a Steranko fan in there who was big. And had he had a book of just like, it was Shield art. It was like Nick Fury, and he had Steranko do a page in there. Like he had gone to cons and had artists do their takes on Nick Fury and stuff. And so he was a big Steranko fan, and I remember reading that, but I don't remember anything about it, just the style.
Yeah. Can you hear me? My computer freaked out for a second there. I'm sure.
Your audio sounds different, so it almost sounds like maybe a different mic is picking you up, but it sounds fine.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's fine. Is there ever there was one I wanted to read, because is there a book that you just picked up randomly that you go, oh, this is something special and is kind of like a key part of your lore of comics?
Yeah, I saw this question. I was like, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, there are a lot of, I guess I'm getting caught like picking up something blind. I'm like, I'll give this a shot. And then it kind of like, whoa, wow. And I think I'd have to probably go back to those early, you know what it is? I got one. It's Mage. Matt Wagner did a comic called Mage. It's 3 parts. So there's a Hero Discovered, which that's early comics. I did not know that existed. I came in with the Hero Defined, which was an Image comic, which is the second part. It's like an 11-issue, 12-issue series.
Yeah.
And we follow a character called Kevin Matchstick, who is essentially a King Arthur kind of, I don't know, avatar, I guess, sort of, would be the way to put it. He's Kevin Matchstick, but he's imbued the abilities of King Arthur, and so he has a bat that kind of looks like a lightsaber, and he goes around and collects all these other modern day people who also are imbued with powers of like these mythological characters. So one is like Hermes or some like there's a Hercules character. There's a like a Hermes character. I forget. They're all these kind of mythological people.
Isn't there like a Merlin? Isn't there
There's a Merlin. There's a wizard Merlin. And they go around. They have to beat up bridge trolls and all these other things. But it all takes place in modern times in the 90s at the time. I had no idea. Like I was super into superhero comics at the time, so this is not a superhero comic. And I was just like, oh, this is so cool. I loved it. I ate that stuff up. It helped that he had a lightsaber bat. That was cool.
Yeah, that was really
I
cool.
love Matt Wagner artwork. And like his artwork is just, I think it's very cartoony and simplified, but it's so good. I love it.
Yeah, I love his artwork on Grendel Batman. He did a crossover book and did the art in that, and uses a lot of small panels, and it's just really good for the story, and it really makes his art pop.
He has a book DC. He has a book at DC called Trinity, where it's like the first time Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman meet.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a great book.
For me, it was Animal Man, because
yeah.
Animal Man, and at the time I believe it was Jamie Delano and Steve Pugh, and Steve Pugh was doing this incredible art in this book that was bloody and gory and part of that Animal Man universe, and it was just right before it went to Vertigo. So it was like really kind of edgy stuff, and then it was like, well, it's going to be under its own imprint or another imprint now. And so I was excited because I was just like, well, what does that mean? But it just kept dealing with the red. Buddy Baker being, he's a father, he's a husband, he's a superhero. He's connected via the red through all living creatures of the earth, and so he also becomes vegetarian because of this. Like there are different aspects of that book that it's like a hero being a father, but he was also like absent a lot, and he had a daughter who kind of had a connection with animals too that started to happen, and he wasn't the best husband all the time. It was just a normal dude. And so it was interesting to read his book because I don't think anyone's ever done anything like that. And then, you can get the Grant Morrison run that becomes, very meta, and it has just different aspects of a hero that I'd never really thought about until those stories. And then that was an introduction to Vertigo. And then I was like, oh, what's this Swamp Thing book? The movie was hilarious. This should be a fun read. And then you have Abby eating the potato that would make her high and seem like she's in a world with Alec, and oh man, that's so trippy.
After we had that conversation last episode of the impromptu Mount Rushmore.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, who could Karen Berger, who was the editor of the Vertigo titles, should definitely deserves to be on a mountain somewhere.
Oh, most definitely. Like the influence of those books are amazing. Like just, the Sandman universe and all the characters within that, and how that started off like more of a horror story. Like the beginnings of Sandman are just so dark until it gets into that like otherworldly type endless stuff. Again, Transmetropolitan started as a hybrid imprint for DC, and then when that died, that book was still successful, so it jumped over to Vertigo. Just so many good things, and I thought DC was trying to bring it back, but I just don't think it's the same without her.
No, I don't think so either. I think you need somebody who has a vision of how things are going to go in order to kind of keep that. I don't think DC knows what they're doing because they still have the Black Label books too. I don't think they have any kind of like idea as to what each little what should occupy which lane. Kind of thing.
It's funny because the Black Label books I see show up at Half Price Books, but they're filed away in a special area because they're magazine sized. They're not a trade, they're not a comic, but they're also oversized and with a lot of the RPG stuff I've seen. Let's see here. What would you recommend for entry into comics today?
Today, I would say go get a Marvel Unlimited thing and just start flipping through it. I don't know. I don't read a lot of digital. I don't read any digital comics. I don't like it because I'm old and I'm stuck in my ways. But I feel like if you were to start reading today, and you were technologically advanced in your brain, you know, like most kids are, like that would probably be the easiest thing. Because I think it's as growing up in the 80s, 90s, picking up comics, really the only way to do it is you just go in, you just buy a comic, you just keep going back and buying comics. And you pick up in the middle of the story, you have to pick up right in the middle, and then you just grab on and hope that you can figure out what's going on. Once you kind of get a lay of the land, then you find yourself going back for back issues, and you're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
let me find out what happens. And I think that's pretty much universally everybody's story. I had a friend who was reading comics before me, who kind of gave me a little bit of an introduction, and I flipped through a couple of his Captain America and Iron Man comics because that's what he collected. He collected a lot of Thor stuff too. But I think that's why I got into Captain America and Iron Man first, because I was like, oh, one guy has a cool suit, the other guy throws a shield. I don't know why I kind of zeroed in on that, but uh, frisbees are cool.
Yeah.
But I think really what it is you just dive in. You have to dive in. Um, you can start like if you have like, oh, I love Batman. I love the Batman movies. Certainly, people can be like, read year one, go read, you know, 0 Year. I think some people are like the newer stuff that people really love.
I mean, even Batman 66, you could find
Batman's,
Batman 66 comics that, deal
yeah,
with
yeah,
the same
yeah.
stuff.
So I think there are more choices for you to get into now, whereas back in the day it was just like, oh, you just start. You just got to start. But I feel like you just got to start is probably the best way, because it also gives you the widest depth of like of you don't understand what the connections are at first, like
Yeah.
especially as a kid. So you kind of fill those gaps in as you go along, and I think that's super cool, because then that's how you kind of grab on and latch on to these weird things where you're like, Atari Force is now weirdly one of my favorite comics of all time, because it's just you just kind of happen across it and it just hits you at the right time, and uh that's how you get your weird things that you just end up loving.
Yeah, because I mean, it was just like, what is this cool art? Like that to me,
Yeah.
that was like, this is just fun. A bunch of misfits who, running through the galaxy, kind of thing. If I were to recommend anyone, the thing that's different nowadays is, and where I do most of my reading is libraries. So you
Yeah.
can like just
Libraries are really good too. Yeah.
you could just point to either a digital copy or a physical copy. I know like the book that we're doing for our next comic book club here in Dallas is Superman Space Age, which I found at the library and read, and is fantastic, and one I recommend if you want to collect. Probably like a free comic book day would be another time to just go pick up a ton of stuff that you go, well, I really like this, and then it'll help you go find the next thing you want to read. That's
The other thing,
they're more
publishers,
proactive now. That's the best thing.
they are. Publishers don't do this as much as they used to anymore. But so like they used to publish things like the best Batman stories ever told, where it wasn't like this is a story arc. These are 7 very random issues that are standalone issues, or 12, whatever, however many are in those books. Because there's like 4 volumes of that book.
Yeah.
But I don't think they published anything like. And Marvel used to do this something, Bring on the Villains, where it would be these random issues. Those are also really good because you get like a smattering of a whole bunch of stuff, and then you can kind of pick out like, oh, I want to follow this storyline or this whatever. It's a good overview of a bunch of stuff.
I have like the Batman one and the Joker one, and they're printed on like newsprint. They aren't even
yeah.
fine like good paper. So it's
back in the day they
that
didn't
old.
really yeah. They were just like, get the stuff out,
Yeah, and it's wild because now you can get like glossy paper and just like spend a ton on just printing, just the quality of what you're going to get. But I used to say that the Ultimate Universe was a great place to start because I feel like, and this is not the one that's out now, but the one from back in the day. But man, I can't say, hey, you should read, Ultimate Spider-Man because of how it ends, but you got Mark Bagley and Bendis on like an epic run.
That's a great run. That is a great comic. That's a very fun comic to read.
Ultimate Fantastic Four. They're a lot younger in that book and super smart. So it's kind of neat to see like these kids that are being rewarded for being really smart.
Mm-hmm.
But Reed becomes the maker. It's like the Ultimate Universe. It was just a lot darker than we really thought about. So it's interesting because I've given out Ultimate Fantastic Four 1, to kids because I feel it's a great place to start. They may not continue. I believe like Warren Ellis takes over to tell the backstory of Dr. Doom in that one, and some of the art changes. But if you get kids hooked on like science or action or just something like that, then you can keep pulling them back. Every Halloween I give out comics because you get free comic book day stuff. I'm not going to collect all that. I have duplicates of stuff, stuff that I feel like kids would read. So I put them into stacks. I have young kids, any kid that like is just going to look at like maybe a Disney book or Casper or stuff like that. I have a stack where I feel like the kid's young enough, they might just look at the pictures and maybe that's interesting to them. And then I have like boy comics and girl comics where I want to have like a female lead. I'm going to give that to any of the girls that are trick-or-treating, and, boy comics are pretty much the majority of what I have. So it's really tough to find that stuff. But one of my greatest times giving out comics during Halloween was this girl who just had Supergirl head to toe stuff. She wasn't dressed as Supergirl. She had a Supergirl baseball hat. She had a cape that was pink that had the logo on the back, and she had a t-shirt, and she just loved Supergirl. So immediately pull out Supergirl and give it to her, and she just yells to her dad, "I got Supergirl comics." She was just so excited, because it's like, she just thought she's getting more candy.
Got something way better.
Yeah, and even like, my neighbors are weird because I've seen complaints on Nextdoor where they go, why are some of these teenagers trick-or-treating? And I'm like, why are you arguing over like a 25 cent piece of candy? I mean, you bought candy to just give away, like, and I had like older kids come, and I gave them like what I feel like maybe they could read because and this kid was like, "I can have this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was just like, "Oh, well, thanks. That's cool." Because it was getting something that was different from all the other houses. So I try to spread the word all the time.
That's good. That's good. Well, Clay, I think we've done it. I'm gonna have to use the restroom soon.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for everyone that joined us in chat. And let me find our outro because I'm not usually the producer here.
I usually would have chatted this, but then I'm like, it's casual Saturday. It's casual assistant editor Saturday. And I feel like we should be open with the people watching.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. It was nice. We haven't done like a one-on-one show, so this was great knowing more of your lore.
Leave a comment. Tell us what your favorite five series are in the comments below. We love. Give us recommendations if you're like, hey, you didn't, like somebody said, God Loves, Man Kills. Why did that make our list? Tell us what we missed. Tell us what we missed.
Favorite one-shots, anything.
And if you're looking to get into comics, let us know what movies you like, and we'll give you a recommendation.
Exactly. They don't have to be MCU movies. You can say, you know what I really like? I like pirate movies. And it's like, we'll find a pirate comic.
You could be like, I love The Brutalist. Give me, and I'd be like, okay, well, you need to go read, I don't know, Blanket. Go read Asterios Polyp. That is actually about an architect.
That's a good recommendation. Very controversial ending.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, everyone.
If you love The Brutalist, go read Asterios Polyp. That's what we're going to leave you with.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Most important thing in life will always be
El Bebo.
Peter loves you.
Simon Center, get the fuck out.
All right. Bye.
Get out of here.